coming to the first workshop of 2022. And this was something that the PRC asked me to do, some workshops about why is the PYP unique and how does it compare to different curriculums around the world. So we split it into two parts. This is part one, and it's all about learning in the PYP. So please stop me at any time for any questions. So the session aims. So first of all, I'm going to just quickly set the scene because I know you are experts in the missions, but just to give a quick scene start, and then to think about why do we need two parts to this topic of learning in the PYP, to focus on the different approaches to teaching, and then to start answering the question, what makes the PYP different to other programs, and what sort of child will you have at the end of the PYP? So here are the IB mission. Okay. Now, as a PYP school, we must aim to meet this mission. Okay. And the words in red show the type of schools IB schools should be. So if you want to be an amazing IB school, you should try to inspire the students and help them to become knowledgeable and caring. IB schools should also be rigorous. It's not an easy choice of program for your child. That's because students, we want them to become active, lifelong learners. And here at GIS Monza, we have our own mission. This is the GIS School Group mission. And we have our 5 educational values, and all our decisions are guided by this mission, the IB mission, and these values. So GIS Monza is committed to providing a supportive and innovative learning environment in which all members of the community are challenged to achieve their individual potential, encouraged to pursue their passion, empowered to fulfill their responsibilities, and engaged in relationships based on self-expression, mutual respect, and teamwork. So the words I put in red here show how our mission aligns to the IB mission. But when you take the red parts from the IB mission and the red words from the GIS mission, certain aims come out. So students in the PYP should be encouraged, they should be empowered, they should be engaged and learn to be active participants in the learning. They should be compassionate about the world around them, and they should want to be a lifelong learner. Now, these are massive aims. They're really big asks of little children who are just 2 or 3 to 11 years old. So if schools really want to be all of these things and do all these things, they need a powerhouse program or a powerhouse framework in which to do these things. So this is why GIS Monza wants to be a PYP school. And as you know, next Monday and Tuesday, the IB will visit us via Zoom to see if we are meeting the standards of an IB World School, because we think through the PYP, we can meet all of these big aims. Would you like to ask any questions about the mission?
No, for me it's okay. Yes.
Sorry, my computer keeps deciding not to turn to the next page. So this is what it looks like in the PYP program model. And this is the model that PYP schools have to follow. So I think it's important to clarify that there isn't a set curriculum. We don't have certain topics that we have to cover because the PYP is in nearly every country around the world. So every country has different topics to explore. So what we say is the PYP is a framework. That's what you can see in the different circles. And then we put the curriculum, we build the curriculum around this framework. So when we think about learning, we're concentrating on this second circle here. So we have the learner profile in the middle, and then this second circle is about learning, approaches to teaching, approaches to learning. So this is why the workshop is in 2 parts, because we need to deep dive into both parts of this circle. In reality, we could spend a year on this part of the circle. So it's just an introduction, and please do ask questions as we go along. So, like I said, we're going to concentrate on the approaches to teaching. And this company called ManageBack have created some nice posters for teachers to use in presentations about the PYP. And this one summarizes the approaches to teaching we have in the PYP. So before the holidays, we had a workshop all about assessment. And we also talked about global contexts when we had the workshop on international mindedness. So I'm not going to cover those today, and we're going to concentrate on the other parts of the poster, which are these. So what does make the PYP unique? What are the approaches to teaching that we'll talk about now? So we have inquiry-based learning, concept-based learning, transdisciplinary learning, reflection, action, and the role of the teacher. And we're going to start with inquiry-based learning. So in a PYP school, children learn through inquiry. And what does this mean? Well, as the teachers, we have a document that the IB give us, and it details every aspect of the PYP. It's called Principles into Practice. And I'll be using some of the quotes and the diagrams from that document to help me explain the PYP. So in this document, they have a neat little definition of what we mean by inquiry-based learning. So inquiry, as the leading approach of the PYP, recognizes students as being actively involved in their own learning. So that goes back to the mission, and is taking responsibility for that learning. So they're taking ownership of what they're learning. PYP learning is approached with a spirit of inquiry, drawing from the transdisciplinary themes, so how the world works, how we express ourselves, and students' interests. Inquiry is an authentic way for students to relate to, explore, and understand the world around them. So what that looks like is every unit that your children inquire into, they have a central idea. And this is the big idea that we want to inquire about. And then the teacher, or with the children sometimes as well, creates lines of inquiry to help guide the process, because this makes sure that the program is not just, all the children come in the morning, what do you fancy talking about today? What do you want to learn? And then the children decide and the teacher sits there with their cup of tea. It's not like that. They have lines of inquiry that they want to share with the children to help them to understand the central idea better. And so how exactly do they do this? Well, we decided at GIS to use an inquiry cycle by the Australian educator and researcher Kat Murdoch. As you know, I think I've mentioned I am obsessed with her work, but it wasn't just my decision. All the teachers love Kat Murdoch's work. So we have her inquiry cycle here, and the children move around the inquiry cycle, sometimes back around to find out more. And each stage of the cycle, the children do something different. They tune in and get excited about the unit. They prepare and practice skills. They will need to find out information about the unit. And then they use a lot of different methods to find out and research and inquire. Then they sort out the information they have. They ask questions. They ask further questions. They make connections. And sometimes they will take action. And there are certain inquiry skills PYP children learn, and they are here on the slide for you. So PYP children who are in an inquiry classroom, they ask a lot of questions. So sometimes when the children get here to sorting out, they realize actually that they're missing pieces of the puzzle. They don't have all the information they need to satisfy their inquiry question. So they go back here to finding out and do some more research to help them go further. They do a lot of sharing of their wonderings, sharing of their ideas. They use research skills to find out. Even the youngest children start to do this. And this is where the library is very helpful as well. And they do something with the information that they find out. They don't just say, oh, that was nice. That's the end of the inquiry cycle. Next. Maybe they'll share it with somebody, or they'll want to find out even more. And of course, we hope that they'll make connections to things they've done before or things they've done at home, and to take action, which I have on the other slide. So the teacher is not just giving the answers in an inquiry classroom. They're not saying red is red and white is white, for example, but they're providing the platform, the stage for the children to discover and explore. And I hope that when you see the diaries every day, you can see the inquiry in action by all the different things the children are saying, the wonderings that they have, the questions that they ask. Would you like to ask anything about inquiry-based learning? So this one is...
It's okay, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next one is concept-based learning. Now, we will have a whole workshop on this later in the year. So this is a very quick slide about concept-based learning. So in a PYP school, the children are asked to learn to think in different ways. And so how do we do that? Well, when we're doing our inquiry, we ask the children to think through something called key and related concepts. And here we have the definition from Principles into Practice about what we mean by a concept. So it's a big idea, and they represent something that is broad and timeless and universal. And this part here is the part I'm going to read because it's very important. So concepts add depth and rigor in student thinking to the traditional two-dimensional curriculum consisting of facts and skills. So rather than just learning a set of facts, a set of pieces of knowledge, the children use concepts to go deeper and to think about something in different ways. So what does it look like? So it's not about learning a set of facts or memorizing knowledge just because the teacher tells you to do it. It's to understand the fact and to think in creative ways so that then you can take that learning into a different situation or a different context. So here's a very quick example, and it's from maths. So the number fact, the simple fact, 5 times 3 equals 15. So in maybe a traditional school, we might memorize that 5 3s are 15, 3 5s are 15, and we will continue to parrot it until it's in our memory. But in a PYP school, children will look at this number fact, and rather than just memorizing it, they might apply the concept of causation. Why is it like it is? Why are 3 groups of 5 15? How can we show that in an array, for example? So then this would use the concept of perspective. How many different ways can we draw the fact that 5 times 3 is 15? What exactly does that times mean? When we have 5 and we have 3 groups of them, what does that times in the middle mean? So they're really going deep into the meaning rather than just the surface level facts. Then they'll use the concept of change. What happens if we change the order of those numbers? What if we say 3 5s? Or 15 divided by 5, 15 divided by 3. So we can play around with simple facts, but put concepts behind them. And here's a photo from the primary school here at GIS. And the children were looking at definitions of words, of concepts, and how they link to the pictures. So they were using the concept of connection. So rather than just learning, the word cooperation means, here's a picture of it. They were trying to connect. Well, how does cooperation link to responsibility over here? And making connections on the post-its. So in the end, they ended up with a concept map on the floor. It was a very exciting lesson. So the PYP gives us 7 key concepts that we must explore with the children, but it does expect that the teachers and students can find related concepts. So if we're talking about mathematics, maybe the concept is multiplication. And here's an example from PY2. So the children are inquiring into understanding different ways of inquiring helps people to become lifelong learners. And then they have their lines of inquiry and the key concepts, form, responsibility. But during the unit, the children and the teacher also identified that they needed to think about education as a concept, responsibility, growth, attitude, teamwork, development, identify, roles. It was a massive, massive concept-based unit. So they could make connections to these concepts to extend their learning. And so this way of thinking, this concept-based thinking, really helps your children to go deeper, to think with different perspectives, and to realize, oh, we can look at something in one way, but then we can apply a different concept, and that changes the way we look at the topic. So it's really, really an exciting part of the PYP. And now we move to the third approach to teaching, which is transdisciplinary learning, a tricky word to say and spell. So in a PYP school, subjects have no boundaries and they merge within the inquiry. So we have our subjects, mathematics, English, Italian, geography, history, the arts, PE, PSE, yoga. We have all of these subjects, but they come together in a unit of inquiry, and this is called transdisciplinary learning. And the PYP like to think of it by the work of Choi and Pak, who say that when you have transdisciplinary learning, it's as if you're making a cake. So I'll try to explain what they mean by that. So here's a picture of some ingredients for a cake. It's a messy set of ingredients because learning is always messy. So you have a sprinkle of language, a spoon of geography, 100 milliliters of maths, and all these ingredients go into the inquiry cake. And the outcome is one beautiful, dense, and delicious inquiry cake, where all the subjects have mixed together to help the children to understand the central idea. I think it's a yummy image of what we mean by transdisciplinary learning. But sometimes the teacher will need to focus on a specific subject skill, and it won't fit inside the unit of inquiry, but we need to do it because it's an important skill for the children to inquire about. So when this happens, we call this a standalone lesson, but we don't teach it from the front of the classroom in a traditional style. Today, boys and girls, we're going to learn the number 5, for example. We still teach through inquiry. And here's an example. So this was the skill of learning to count and learning what each number represents when it's written down. So here you can see the teacher didn't just say, this is the number 3, repeat 3, show me 3 fingers. They started to inquire about how they could represent numbers in different ways. So here we have a circle of the numbers, and then when we get to 10, it carries on around, and they can see the pattern as we move from 3 to 13, 4 to 14. And then we have the cubes and the magnetic numbers. So they're inquiring through different methods to learn the skill of counting and recognizing the numbers. The next step was some bookwork in their exercise books, but again using the cubes to see, and the teacher wanted here to see, okay, if we inquire in our books and use the cubes, can the children transfer what they did here into their exercise books? And then comes the next stage of the inquiry, because in inquiry we use a lot of resources to support children's learning and understanding. So we love these at GIS. Out come the compare bears, these little bears. They come out to play as much as possible. We love them. So can the children use them for one-to-one correspondence? So if they know what 2 looks like, can they find 2 bears? And then, even though the inquiry was about counting, the children noticed that they could make patterns with the bears. Green, blue, orange, blue, yellow. And this happens a lot in inquiry classrooms as the children notice other things they can do with their learning. So in a PYP classroom, we aim for as many things as possible to be like the inquiry cake, to be inside the unit of inquiry. But there are some moments where we do have to have standalone lessons. And from transdisciplinary learning, we move to reflection. So in a PYP school, children learn to reflect, and this is part of the inquiry cycle. Every step of that cycle I showed you from Kath Murdoch, there's opportunities to reflect. So what do they reflect on? Well, they reflect on their learning, they reflect on their behavior, they reflect on their attitude towards learning something, on the skills that they acquired, and they reflect on the inquiry process. And it really is at the heart of everything. So here's some examples that you can see. This is the primary, and you can see here this question, why do you think that? So reflecting on why do you have that idea, and thinking about closed questions and open questions, and reflecting on the different types of questions we might ask. Here's an example from a reflection from EY3. And at the end of the first unit, the children had to select a favorite piece of work and reflect on it for their portfolio. And down here we have the words, that's interesting. Can you tell me more? And this is an example of a visible thinking strategy from Harvard University. There are many, many of these, and over the course of the whole PYP, your children will have experience of all of them, because they really do help them to reflect in a purposeful way. And from reflection, we turn to action. And this is something we're working really hard on this year at GIS, because it's quite new for the children, and they're working really, really hard at understanding what action means. So to explain action, I'm going to use another Manage Back poster. And in a PYP school, we hope that the children, if they really are active in the learning, hopefully they will feel empowered to take action. And then they reflect on that action. So the types of action that the PYP have, they categorize action into 5 groups. So sometimes it will be participation. So the children working together, or contributing by themselves but for the cause of a group. Excuse me. It might be advocacy, so taking action to support a cause. It could be social justice, so thinking about, oh, is that fair? Is there some action that we can take to make sure everyone has the same rights? It could be social entrepreneurship, so creating something to make a change. Or it could be an action about lifestyle choices, where your children, for example, might make a change about the way they behave at home or at school. And sometimes an action might be to take no action because the children haven't been very interested in the topic or the unit of inquiry. So the point of the action at the end of the cycle is to remind children that learning isn't passive. They're not sponges sitting and absorbing facts and information. They are part of the learning, and they can use their learning to make a difference. They can choose to take action and reflect on its success at different parts of the inquiry journey. And of course, if your children take action at home, we really want to hear about it so they can share it with the other children, because it's really exciting when that happens. Oops. And finally, the last approach has to be the role of the teacher in all of this. So we've covered all these different types of learning. So what has the teacher got to do with it? Well, I would say that the PYP teacher is a special breed of teacher. They're really hard to find, but when you find an amazing PYP teacher, they sprinkle so much PYP magic. It's just a joy to see. And I would say that GIS is full of these magical PYP teachers. So they have a special role, and I would say also a crucial role, as it says in the title here, in making sure the classroom is filled with certain things. So there are special courses that teachers take to learn about the PYP, and these are provided by the IB. And some universities have degrees which have a certificate in the IB. And this is, for example, the one that Miss Anna has just completed with ITEPS in the Netherlands. So PYP teachers have this role, and what their job is to create a classroom where children wonder, where they want to ask questions, where they want to say, I wonder why. It's a classroom where the children and the teachers should feel curious, to want to know more. It should be a classroom with open-mindedness, where all different views and perspectives can be respected. It should be a classroom of collaboration, so moments where the children can work together and they know how to work together successfully. It should be a classroom that has opportunities for children to learn at their own pace. So this is called scaffolding, where the teacher might give certain groups of children a different type of material or resource so that they can complete the inquiry successfully. Or it could be differentiation, where different groups are working at different levels depending on where they are in their learning. A PYP teacher should also use visible thinking, for example, that strategy I just showed you, and they should post these up on the wall. Also in a PYP classroom, the teacher must have resources and tools so the children can independently inquire. They shouldn't just have to wait for the teacher. And also, lastly, the teacher should be able to hear and use words like, I wonder, maybe, aha, oh no, try again. Or the children and teachers saying, I can't do it yet. So that word yet, I might be able to do it in a couple of days or a couple of years. And then this one is a little bit of a joke, but often when we get to the end of the PYP, so PY4, PY5, you will hear children saying, do we have to reflect again? And that's where when you've had children who have gone through the whole PYP, they are experts at reflecting, but perhaps they think they've had enough of it that day. And it's the job of the PY4 and 5 teachers to re-inspire them and re-engage them in reflection. And here's some pictures from our PYP classrooms. And for me, I would say that PYP classrooms truly are the best type of classroom to be in because they're constantly evolving. No 2 years of the PYP are the same. So the classroom is always moving through units, moving with the children, changing displays. It really is quite an exciting place to work. And when we think about the role as the teacher, the IB provide PYP teachers with this diagram, and it details all the things a PYP teacher should do. And as you can see, there are a huge number of skills involved in bringing about the type of learning the IB want to see. So I'm not going to read them all, of course, but it's just to show you that when teachers choose to be PYP teachers, they learn how to do all of these different things with your children so that they have the best learning experience possible. And Kath Murdoch, who I've mentioned a couple of times, has a lovely short film explaining what the Inquiry Teacher does. And you can download it from the presentation afterwards. It's just a couple of minutes explaining what a PYP teacher looks like. So the PRC asked me to explain in this workshop what makes the PYP different compared to other programs around the world. So I thought I would try to make a personal reflection on this. And when I sat and I reflected, what does make the PYP different? Personally, and some people may disagree with me around the world, but this is just a personal reflection. So I would say that in every program around the world, the approach uses some of the approaches in this poster. So in some curriculums or some programs around the world, there is time for inquiry or there is time for collaboration. But what I would say makes the PYP unique is that in the PYP, we are always teaching with these approaches. It's not a special block on the timetable that we call inquiry time or concept-based time. It's all the time, every day, every minute of every year. And I think that's what makes the PYP unique. And I think something that also makes it different to other programs or other frameworks is that we're not tied down to one specific way of teaching. The PYP doesn't have a scheme that we must teach. It has objectives, but we can add to them. We don't have to say, in May week 3, we will do this objective. The teachers can plan the curriculum using their common sense, using where the children are and where they need to go next. And that's very different to some other approaches to curriculum. And also, like I just said, we move with the pace of the children. So we always have that educational value of excellence in mind. But in PYP schools, children are viewed not as being machines. They're not jumping through hoops to meet an objective because the government tells them by the age of 5, they need to be able to do X, Y, Z. And the job of the teacher is to make sure they do X, Y, Z very well. We move with the children depending on their learning style and the culture that they have. So it's very much about this culture of learning, of moving with the children, listening to the children, following their interests and also helping them to achieve goals, but not racing and rushing and making sure all the children are at the same place at the same time. And also in the PYP, it really does allow for collaboration, questions, debates. It's not the teacher at the front of the classroom dictating to the children. For example, I have taught children from other programs And it takes them about a month before they realize, oh, I can ask questions. I don't have to wait for the teacher to tell me the answer. I can actually ask questions myself. And for some children, it's really, wow, yay, so exciting. Other children, they need that month to get used to this different teaching style. Also in the PYP, the inquiry journey, it's always different. We have the different themes, the different central ideas, and I really do think that the children and the teachers feel energized by this. For the teachers, it's really liberating. So because this gives the teachers so much joy, and it reminds them why they became a teacher in the first place, because they love learning and they love teaching and learning with the children, because the teachers are energized in this way, that reflects in the students who are also excited to go around these inquiry cycles and take action. And then I think the last point would be, although I joked about reflection before, this idea of continuous reflection, looking back to go forward, it does really create lifelong learners. And I have seen some children in the middle school and the diploma who started really when they were 3 years old in the PYP. And that way that they reflect and they think, and they can step back from something and think about how they could do it better or what went well. They really do think in different ways. And I like to call this IB babies, meaning that they truly are part of the IB experience. So that's my personal reflection. Some people may disagree with my points, but that's what I would say from teaching in different curriculums, why the PYP is so important and so special. And then what sort of child will you have at the end of the primary years program before they jump into the middle school? And we'll talk about this more in part 2 in February. And of course, PYP children, as I said, they're not machines, they are individuals. But what we can say is at the end of the PYP, they all have a deep sense of what learning means. So they can inquire about the world around them and they think critically. Is that really correct? Was that source biased? Can I trust that source? Is it reliable? Why is it that way? Isn't it that way for everybody in the world? So they're constantly thinking in critical ways, and they can share their ideas also respectfully. And this diagram here shows how they do that. So they have knowledge, skills, understanding. They believe in the sense of learning as a community. They have knowledge and skills, and they know how to find new understandings by using concepts, by merging the subjects together, by inquiring. And the IB, I just found this yesterday, so I'm very excited, have produced a poster. This is a poster for parents, and it talks all about how you can support your child in their PYP journey. So on our parent Google folder, I've put these posters for your reference. But to summarize, what I would like to say about this slide is, what kind of child will you have at the end of the journey? Well, it has to be a shared journey. It's a shared journey between you, the parents, the students, and the school. And we really want you to feel part of this GIS PYP experience so that you can also see the journey that your children are going on. You can also download the posters from this link here. So it's been such a pleasure to share my love for the PYP with you this evening and to talk about that second circle, part 1, approaches to teaching. And hopefully I've started to begin to explain what makes the PYP so special. We're going to continue this theme on the 8th of February with part 2, approaches to learning. And if you're interested to watch it later, here is a very short little film. It's just 2 minutes and 50 seconds, but it gives you a neat little summary of what we mean by learning in the PYP. And I hope you enjoy it because I think it summarizes what we've been talking about this evening. So thank you so much for coming, and it's time for any questions.
Carry thinkers, this is J